A man has been arrested in Hastings on suspicion of supplying small boats to aid people smugglers in France. Separately, 4 men, 2 Albanian nationals and 2 Romanian nationals have been arrested near the A2 Cobham, believed to have been a handover of migrants from a lorry into 2 cars.
800 senior legal figures and former judges. They're upset at the descriptions used by the Prime Minister and the Home Secretary of their profession when it comes to the defence of people using the law to seek asylum here or to appeal the rejection of asylum. The former Supreme Court Justice Lord Dyson was one of the signatories to the letter and is on the line now. Good morning to you.
Good morning.
What is the language to which you object?
The language to which we all objected was things like removals continue to be frustrated by activist lawyers. That was one of the things that the Home Secretary said. She said when she addressed the party conference in October that those defending the broken system, that's to say the broken asylum system, that including the lefty lawyers, they are defending the indefensible. And it's language of that kind which I think, and all the other more than 800 signatories to the letter, thought was inflammatory and indeed, I would say, irresponsible and dangerous.
But why is it not acceptable for the government, in cases where it believes there has been really egregious abuse on the part of some lawyers, why is it not acceptable for them to be able to say clearly that they criticise those lawyers?
Criticism is entirely acceptable and justified in appropriate cases. But what is happening here is not that an individual lawyer is being criticised for advancing a wholly irresponsible and hopeless argument just to delay things or make life difficult for the government. This is a wholesale onslaught on the profession. All lawyers, it seems to be being said, all lawyers who represent asylum seekers in these difficult cases are activists. They're trying to upset the system and things of that kind, and that's completely unacceptable. Most lawyers are responsible. They are doing a professional job in upholding the law and helping their clients to navigate their way through difficult law and to vindicate their rights.
But isn't the problem for you that a lot of people will look at the facts of what has happened recently and will side with the government rather than the lawyers? I mean, for instance, there was a case recently, a chartered flight, completely accepted under British law and Spanish law. These were asylum seekers being returned to Spain where they should have initially claimed asylum. They made a claim that they might be forced to sleep rough in Spain because there'd been an influx of migrants there, and for that reason, which will seem to most people like quite a loophole, they were allowed to stay, or a number of them allowed to stay. It's cases like that, isn't it, that bring the lawyers into disrepute?
Well, I can't comment on any individual case, obviously, because I don't know the facts. But it will always be possible to find a particular case of which criticism can be made. Lawyers perform a very important role in upholding the rule of law, something which the government time and time again has proclaimed as being very important, and I certainly agree with that. And it is essential to the upholding of the rule of law that we have an independent legal profession which can represent their clients fearlessly, even in unpopular and difficult cases. So, yes, you may be able to find a case where criticism can be made. I don't dispute that. But it's the wholesale onslaught to which I take objection. And I think the whole thing has been overblown and exaggerated. The number of cases, asylum and immigration cases coming to the courts has dropped dramatically in recent years as a result of changes in the legislation made by this government and its predecessor.
When you talk of an onslaught, finally, I mean, that is a strong word to use, and in many respects it's an extraordinary word to use about a government and its attitude to lawyers.
Yes, I'm afraid it is a strong word to use, and I think it's justified. And I'm not the sort of person who writes letters to the press. In fact, this is the very first time I've ever written a letter to the media in my whole life. So it's an indication of the strength of feeling that I have, and the fact that more than 800 lawyers, very distinguished lawyers, have been signatories to this letter is an indication of how strongly we all feel about this.
Lord Dyson.
This is a serious matter.
Former Supreme Court Justice Lord Dyson, thank you very much.
The prisons watchdog has accused the Home Office of failing to prepare for a predictable rise in migrants crossing the English Channel. The Chief Inspector of Prisons, Peter Clark, said migrants have often been held in what looked like an unsafe building site. Inspectors made surprise visits last month to several short-term immigration holding centres. The Home Office says it has now improved a key facility in Dover and takes the welfare of migrants extremely seriously. Here's our Home Affairs correspondent, Dominic Casciani.
This year has seen record numbers of small boat crossings, and some 2,500 migrants have been temporarily held at Tug Haven in Dover. When inspectors arrived, the facility resembled a collection of converted shipping containers, sometimes receiving hundreds of people a day. Inspectors said it was cramped, dirty, and it was impossible to socially distance in line with coronavirus guidelines. Staff ran out of dry clothes and mugs for hot drinks for their cold and wet detainees. Peter Clark said the migrants were traumatised but had been shown decency by staff. He said it was hard to understand why the predictable arrivals had not prompted the Home Office to come up with a better plan.